Hi, I'm Richard Smith, author of the book, Such a Mind Is This? A Biblical Theological Study of Thinking in the Old Testament. In this video, I want to share some thoughts from my book about the image of God. Now keep in mind that this is simply an overview or orientation and is not a detailed exposition. So let's begin with the first idea. There are two ways to consider the image of God in the Bible, and perhaps the most common is the ontological view. Now, ontological is a big word, but essentially we're asking, what kind of being is a human being? We read in Genesis 1:26, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." So we can infer that there's something about a human being that is akin to its creator, God. But we're not ontological clones, but finite and fallible creatures. We are representatives equipped to mirror his character and capacities in the earth. So we are similar and dissimilar to God. We are not demigods, but not simple animals. We are similar and dissimilar to animals, in fact. Our position is mediatory, not too much similarity or dissimilarity to the divine or the earthly. We're not totally alike God, nor totally dissimilar to God. We hold an analogical relation to God, which I will explain in a moment. But let's look at Psalm 8 together. "What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands, and you have put all things under his feet." So I'd like to give you three examples of this ontological distinction. And first of all, consider eternity. We know from Ecclesiastes 3:11 that God has put eternity into man's heart. So what does that mean? Well, it means at least a thirst for transcendence, and most correctly, a thirst for God himself. It also means a sense of timelessness. It's a sense that there's something beyond the daily give and take or treadmill of existence that's more real, more important, more vital than what we experience in daily life. One author wrote, "Eternity refers to an instinct peculiar to our nature, impelling us to pass beyond this fragmentary knowledge and to comprehend eternity." And so for this reason, theologians sometimes call human beings Homo Adorans, worshiping creatures designed by God to love and serve someone greater than ourselves. Secondly, imitation, or more accurately, divine imitation. This means that we imitate God in thought, belief, and behavior. That we know God's character, we learn his motives and seek to replicate them. We also possess a benevolent intentionality as God's stewards over the world, as he manifests benevolent intentionality to us and creation. This is evidenced in this text from Leviticus 11:45. "You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy." Or from the New Testament, "We love because he first loved us." 1 John 4:19. And the third aspect or ontological distinction I want to talk about is thinking. And I will invest a little more time in this because this particular aspect, or thinking, or the mind, is not often associated with the importance it deserves as being the image of God. We know from the Bible that God is the prototypical thinker. He understands everything. There are no gaps in his knowledge. He interprets and evaluates all things, and his interpretation and evaluation is authoritative, and we are culpable for our erroneous interpretations and evaluations. God is the standard and criterion for all thought, including ours. He determines the meaning of all facts and the law of rationality. Now, God also embodies intellectual virtue in an infinite degree. He possesses, embodies wisdom, truthfulness, creativity, and imagination. Courage, carefulness, and fair-mindedness in thought. Curiosity, honesty, and humility. He is the paradigmatic thinker and doer. So God is mankind's intellectual model, which we seek to imitate as the image of God. So God is the supremely intelligent king, architect, economist, and philosopher of creation. He is the ontological genius, savant, virtuoso, and mastermind. He is a specialist in every kind of intelligence and knowledge. He understands in depth and breadth every realm of knowledge in every language and at every level of development. And because this is who he is, he created a world for intelligent creatures, the image of God. The world was made for thinkers, in fact, for a great mind created it. These are beings with curiosity, intellectual desire, and an aspiration for wisdom. And this world is an understandable world, subject to analysis. It is rational, manageable, and malleable for expansion and development. So imaging God is inconceivable without utilizing the cognitive abilities God provides and models. So human beings are created in his image as apprentice rulers, builders and designers, benefactors and entrepreneurs, thinkers and philosophers in creation. We call this kind of knowledge servant knowledge. One author wrote, "It is a knowledge about God as Lord, and a knowledge that is subject to God as Lord." We call this analogical, the term I referred to earlier, meaning we presuppose God's interpretation of creation. We depend upon revelation to understand anything at all, including ourselves. God's understanding is the precondition that enables finite creaturely knowledge. And this is expressed quite well in Psalm 36:9, "In your light do we see light." Now let's talk about the second view of the image of God, the functional view. And this simply asks, what do human beings do? What is our function or purpose on earth? Well, in the Old Testament, rulers placed images with its inscriptions at distant points within their empire to represent their dominion. There you have an example. And it was thought that a spirit of a god resided in an object to represent a king and his patron deity watching over the subjects within his domain. Well, clearly, bearers of God's image manifest his presence, purpose, and power in the world to care for the inhabitants of his house or temple. We are the image of God in his empire. Then, of course, there's the cultural mandate expressed in Genesis 1-26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." This means that human beings are commissioned to mirror God and represent his interests within his earthly empire as his servants. We are apprentice kings to govern with wisdom and foresight as God models for us. We are apprenticed architects to build and fill creation with artistry and utility. We are apprenticed economists to administer just and generous stewards. and we are apprentice philosophers to mirror God's thoughts about creation as finite thinkers. So, the image of God manifests in an analogical fashion God's kingship, his architectural and building prowess, his entrepreneurial motivation and benefaction, and a thirst for wisdom and the sacred. Humans possess inherent capacities and desires resembling God's that equip them to function as the vice-regents or stewards of creation. Their abilities and motivations, when exercised properly, enable the world to flourish. And so again, that's why theologians sometimes call us Homo Adorans, or worshiping creatures, but also Homo sapiens, thinking creatures, self-conscious, Homo descens, creatures who learn, who possess intellectual curiosity, Homo quaerens, creatures that question, who wonder, Homo imaginans, that's a hard one, imaginans, creatures that imagine and create, and Homo faber, creatures that build and organize. So again, the image of God is the creature that listens, but not just listens to God, but also obeys. And so there you have an overview of the image of God represented in my book, Such a Mind as This. And I hope you find this helpful and adds to your knowledge that you already have and expands it.